recognize the member for Edmonton-McClung.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in the House today filled with respect and humility to deliver my response to the speech from the throne. Let me first thank the voters of my fine riding of Edmonton-McClung for electing me to serve them as their member in this 29th legislature. Most of those Edmonton-McClung electors knew that I had been a perennial candidate for the NDP. In fact, I ran 4 times before being elected last May, the 5th, and I'm still ecstatic at being given this opportunity to fulfill a dream of elected public service that I've had since boyhood. Begging the forgiveness of Tommy Douglas, I must admit that my first memories of public discourse, which attracted me to aspire to public office, were the firebrand speeches of another well-known politician that I viewed on our family's black box-style black-and-white Emerson TV in 1963. He actually presided over the opening in March 1958 of our federal building, a month after I was born. Provincial Legislative Assembly members and staff now occupy that newly renovated structure, located just north of our legislature. I refer, of course, to the passionate and often impassioned Right Honourable the late John D. Diefenbaker, former Progressive Conservative Prime Minister of Canada. Call me strange, but politics interested me even at age 5. The deaths and televised funerals about that time of 2 other formidable statesmen from that era also made an impression upon me, those of John F. Kennedy and Winston Churchill. They told me about how societies rely upon the dedication and commitment to service of their elected representatives. We are a privileged group, we legislators, with a massive responsibility placed upon our shoulders. Never must we take that lightly. We are being called upon by this and future generations to govern well and with foresight. I take some of this countenance from my late maternal grandmother, Winifred Ada LaBelle, as well, who served numerous terms as councillor and deputy mayor of the village of Thorhild, located about an hour's drive northeast of Edmonton. Thorhild was my first home as well. We lived next door to what was known in Thorhild as the Big House, the house my grandmother and her husband, Joseph-Édouard Napoleon Labelle, built in 1947, when my grandfather, Nap, as he was known, returned from overseas service after 5 years during World War II in the Canadian Army. Part of the Big House was leased to Canada Post. My grandparents were the postmasters in Thorhild, and the post office was built as part of the house. It was leased to the federal government. My grandmother, who was known as Win, was an entrepreneur as well as a public servant. You can be both. The late Michael Senich, who served 2 terms as a member of this assembly with the Social Credit Party, lived in a basement suite of that house for a number of years. Mr. Senich was a pillar of community service to Thorhild throughout his life. Now, as he could have told you, after losing his seat along with most of his so-called colleagues, in a healthy, prosperous, functioning democracy, governments change from time to time. His tenure at the legislature ended in 1971 when the Progressive Conservative government led by Peter Lougheed was elected. Who knew then that it would be 44 years before Albertans finally elected new leadership to represent them in May of 2015? Yes, the fundamental rules of politics 101 apply even to Alberta. When the public loses trust in their government and there's a credible alternative party in the wings, a free electorate will vote out the stale government and a new government will be asked to start afresh. That is what has happened in Alberta. Our NDP government has been given a chance to effectively govern this province. We have been granted the public trust that the previous government forgot how to value. More than that, we've been asked to implement our vision for the future of this province and Alberta's place within the Canadian Federation. To turn our vision into action is something we in the current Alberta New Democratic Party have been thirsting for since the early days of the precursor federal party, the Cooperative Commonwealth Federation, and pioneers like M.J. Colwell, J.S. Woodworth, Tommy Douglas, and of course later Grant Notley. We must honor that proud early legacy by governing with our eyes clearly focused both on the current serious issues Albertans face right now, as well as on the long-term obstacles and opportunities we need to prepare for to protect future generations. As we all discovered last May, Albertans expect their government to focus on their interests, not on political expedience. Our government caucus recognizes and embraces this demand. We immensely value the trust that Albertans have placed in us. Now, the constituency that I represent is named after Nellie McClung, one of the famous 5 Alberta women activists who won the Persons case as adjudicated by the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council, or the JCPC, then the highest court of appeal available to Canadians. The JCPC ruled that women were indeed considered persons under Section 24 of the British North America Act in 1867, and therefore could be appointed to the Senate. Nellie McClung was also instrumental in the suffrage movement in Manitoba and Alberta, and herself became a member of this assembly in 1921. And I have a special favor to ask of members as well as pages in the House. I would ask that if any current member or page finds the name of Nellie McClung scribed into their desk drawer, to please allow me to view it. I'm inspired daily by the steadfast commitment to principle Nellie McClung and the other famous 5 women activists displayed in unyielding fashion in the face of overwhelming odds during a time when women were not considered legally to be persons. Nellie McClung is a strong role model to me as I represent my constituents in this assembly. Now, I've lived for almost 30 years in the Edmonton-McClung riding. I bought my first house in the Jameson Place neighborhood in 1987, early in my career as a real estate agent. Over the course of my career as a real estate agent, I estimate that I sold about 800 properties, either as a listing agent or selling agent. Most of these were residential transactions. However, I did obtain my commercial designation in 2012 to shift my focus onto raw land and land development. My license currently is deactivated to avoid any conflict of interest while I serve in this chamber. However, being a real estate agent was very good preparation for my new role as an elected MLA. For 30 years, I've been used to working long hours in the service of individuals and families who relied upon my expertise to protect their financial interest and satisfy their housing needs. During my real estate career, I served on the board of HomeEd, the City of Edmonton nonprofit housing corporation, for 6 years. HomeEd publicly owned and managed over 700 units of affordable housing. That board experience illustrated to me the need for ongoing government commitment to provide safe, affordable housing to those in our society who are not served by market housing. I will continue to advocate for creative financing solutions and public ownership models that allow our government to properly maintain our current affordable housing stock and build or acquire new units to address the current serious affordable housing shortfall. I also have a continued interest in real estate industry matters, and am working with industry members to bring pertinent issues to the government's attention. Now, in Edmonton-McClung, up to 30% of some of these populations of the schools are First Nations. Teachers must be aware of and sensitive to the history, culture, languages of their Indigenous students. Soon after I was elected, I discovered that Phyllis Cardinal, one of the founders of the Misquachie Academy in Edmonton, lived near me. Her daughter Neva introduced us, and within 3 weeks, Phyllis had me in meetings with other educators to discuss a pilot project to teach teachers how to properly teach to their Indigenous student populations. Now, very sadly, Phyllis Cardinal died a few weeks ago. I have pledged to her family that I will continue to work with them and their project team to move forward with Phyllis's goal that no Indigenous child shall be shortchanged in their education. Now, there are a number of adult bungalow complexes and one major aging-in-place facility in Edmonton-McClung as well. All MLAs can relate to the delicate situation of seniors' housing. Almost all seniors wish to stay in their own home as long as possible. We also know that this is by far the most economical way to house our senior population. I'm committed to exploring solutions which provide supports that allow our seniors to safely reside in their own homes or apartments, even when faced with increasing mobility or health challenges. This is a win-win investment, in my view. Now, Alberta society is very diverse. Edmonton-McClung is no exception. About 70% of Edmonton's 5,500-plus Jewish population lives in Edmonton-McClung, which is also home to Edmonton's largest synagogue, Beth Israel. The K-9 Edmonton Talmud Torah School is also located in the riding. The Muslim Association of Canada, MAC Rama Mosque, operates in Edmonton-McClung as well. This thriving mosque has a thriving youth group that outreaches regularly with the community, and I've worked with them and focused on efforts to deliver hampers at Christmas, and engaged with another effort that I'll talk about a little bit later with that group and others in the riding. 6 Christian churches also call Edmonton-McClung home. Many people believe that West Edmonton has a uniformly wealthy population. While some of Edmonton's most affluent neighborhoods are found along the North Saskatchewan River Valley in Edmonton-McClung, about 20% of the population in the constituency actually lives below the poverty line. Many newcomers to Canada live in rented apartments or townhouses in the center of the riding. Our lower-income families need to be a priority for our government. Children supported well early in life have a much better chance of becoming self-sufficient adults. Therefore, the immigrant population in Edmonton-McClung is a very big priority to me, as well as all the children in those families. Now, I've always loved to travel. I've hitchhiked across Canada for the first time when I was 16 years old. I've thumbed across large portions of our vast and beautiful country 3 other times, once in the winter time on way to Europe when I flew from Gander, Newfoundland, to spend time in Europe riding the trains and hitchhiking around at age 20. I rode in the back of beer trucks, pickup trucks, and even got a ride once from Joey Smallwood's youngest brother in a dump truck that he was delivering from Port aux Basques, Newfoundland, to New Brunswick. He had no interest whatsoever in politics or much respect for his brother, but nonetheless, it was an interesting ride. We need to encourage and support travel by young people, both within Canada and abroad. There's no greater way to appreciate one's own home than to experience someone else's. Now, I've been to every continent on this earth at least twice, except for Antarctica, which I've only been to once in 2012. I was lucky enough to get inside of Captain Scott's hut, built in 1910 at Cape Evans on Ross Island, which is located about 78 degrees south, nearly as far south as a ship can sail on the planet. Now, many places I've been to were functioning democracies. Many were not. I wish democracy for the world. It ain't perfect, but it beats the alternatives by a country mile. Now, I could go on for some time, but I'll finish now by saying that there's no place on this planet I would rather be than right here, right now, representing the people of Edmonton-McClung in the Alberta legislature. Like all Albertans, I wish that our economic circumstances were better. However, we have endured numerous economic troughs in the past, caused in large part by our over-reliance on energy royalties to fund our operational budget. We all know this has to change. Our NDP government will approach this task in a responsible manner, what I call the Hippocratic way, by taking great effort to, first of all, do no harm, by maintaining our public services, like education, health care, and affordable housing initiatives through this cyclical downturn, while bending the cost curve over the longer term to keep these services sustainable. All the while, we know how important it will be to keep Albertans informed about our objectives and the options we have to choose from to achieve them. Now, Albertans can rely on our government to guide them through these stormy waters. We are completely focused on our service to them, and I promise you, we will be prepared to face their judgment come the next election based on a sound record of responsible economic management and innovative approaches to the chronic challenges we face today. Let's all get to work. Thank you.